Today, Iran is governed by an Islamic theocracy. Sharia law is the law of the land, women must wear the hijab, and thousands of people who have resisted the regime have been put to death. Why is this? Well, at the most surface level, people can argue it's because Iran is Muslim. But there are other Muslim countries who aren't so bad, and there are plenty of Buddhist countries who are pretty bad. But what if Iran never converted to Islam in the first place? What if the Muslim armies of the Caliphate failed to conquer Persia in the 600s? What would Iran look like? Before we get into the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Okay, first it's important to get the background down. Islam has its origins with the Prophet Muhammad, then just an Arab merchant who began to receive messages from God in 610 CE. Arabia at the time was far outside the control of the Christian Byzantine or the Zoroastrian Sasanian Empire, so when Muhammad's religion got going, he was able to create a new political order outside the bound of those decaying empires. By his death in 632 CE, most of the Arabian Peninsula had adopted Islam. After the Prophet's death, the Muslim community elected Abu Bakr, his father-in-law, to serve as the first caliph of the new Muslim empire. Quickly, Muslim forces expanded out of the Arabian Peninsula, defeating the Byzantines and Sasanians in a series of battles. After winning the decisive Battle of Nahavand, Arab forces conquered the Persian highlands. This was not just a brief occupation, of course. In the centuries to come, Persia was deeply shaped by Arab culture. Islam replaced Zoroastrianism as the dominant religion, Arabic became the dominant alphabet, and so on. But what if the Battle of Nahavand went the other way? Now, scholars today aren't absolutely sure about the details of that battle, but generally the sources say that the Persians outnumbered the Arabs significantly, about 75,000 to 30,000. The Persians, under General Peroz's Khusraw, had the advantage of numbers and entrenchment, but were probably drawn from the various inexperienced peasants in service of Persian noblemen, whereas the Arab army had plenty of battle experience and was commanded by the veteran General Nu'aman.
Hello, Noman.
Different sources provide different pictures of how the battle played out. In one, Persia wasted its cavalry in an ill-prepared pursuit. After crushing the cavalry, Nu'aman marched in and finished the Persians. In another version, Nu'aman feigned a retreat to draw out Peroz and his men from their trenches, then counterattacked and crushed them, kind of like the Battle of Cannae. Now, of course, if Sasanian dynastic politics played out differently in the 630s, maybe they wouldn't have been in the midst of a civil war when the Caliphate attacked. But the Battle of Nahavand itself could have turned out differently. Sasanian forces weren't completely incompetent. They won the Battle of the Bridge in 634, for example. Practically all Peroz had to do was stay in place. He outnumbered the Arab forces and had a stronger defense.
Hello, Jerry. May I come in?
What do you want?
Nothing.
So let's say he does just that. Nu'aman bashes his army against Peroz's until the casualties are too high, then he withdraws. If the Persians survived at Nahavand, that would have been the decisive moment of the war and Persian history in general. There has only been 2 times in history that somebody conquered Persia from the west: Alexander the Great and the Caliphate. If the Persian army survived at Nahavand, it could have very easily employed the tactics used by the Byzantines to slow down Muslim advance through Anatolia: evacuate people, burn crops, retreat when necessary, and wage guerrilla warfare. The same mountainous conditions in Anatolia can be found in the highlands of Iran. But Persia, just like the Byzantine Empire, wasn't doing so well anyways. The Sasanian capital, Ctesiphon, fell to the Caliphate before Nahavand. The Sasanian dynasty, which derived its power from Iraq, probably wouldn't have lasted much longer even if it did ward off conquest. Persia would likely fragment into a series of competing principalities, which happened pretty often actually. Some of those principalities close to Muslim-ruled Iraq might even fall, but Arab advance across the Persian mountains would be unlikely. So, what next? First, let's talk about religion. The Sasanian Empire was predominantly Zoroastrian. Today, there's not really a lot of Zoroastrians left, which is a shame because it's a fascinating religion. Zoroastrianism is ancient. It's probably the first monotheistic religion, and it worships a supreme god called Ahura Mazda. Actually, Zoroastrianism has a lot of ideas similar to the Abrahamic religions to the west. It holds that the universe is in a state of battle between good and evil, with Ahura Mazda promoting good and an evil deity called Angra Mainyu promoting evil. Now, the Sasanian court promoted a unique form of Zoroastrianism in which there was a third deity, Zurvan, who was actually the supreme god and the god of time and so on. Without Islam, Zurvanism might have survived in the Sasanian core of southwest Iran. In fact, Zoroastrianism likely would have continued to be the majority religion of all of Iran without its supplantation by Islam. So we can imagine the continuation of a Zoroastrian priesthood centered in a series of prominent fire temples across Iran, whose holy language of Avestan, which was an ancient Iranian language, would deeply influence the language of the region. Zoroastrianism might even expand to new regions like modern-day Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Turkmenistan. But that wasn't the only religion in Iran. This was a cosmopolitan and dynamic region where there were major populations of Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, and even Manichaeans. These religions would continue to make up a major part of Iran, kind of like India in the same period. Islam would doubtlessly be added to the mix, with non-Sunni Muslims probably seeking refuge in Iran. So Shia Islam might still exist in this scenario, but as a minority religion, kind of like Zoroastrianism in India today. Now, because the Caliphate didn't expand Islam to Iran, that means Islam won't go beyond into northwestern India or Central Asia. Instead, Hinduism and Buddhism would continue to thrive as major religions in those places. For example, Buddhism would stay as the largest religion of Afghanistan, with the high priest of the Balkh monastery serving as a major figure in that faith. We can still expect Mongol or Turkic conquests in the future, but those forces would be Tengrist, Buddhist, or even Zoroastrian instead. With no Islam in India, there won't be a Pakistan today, but maybe India is still divided by culture. That lets us transition to culture. So Sasanian Persia was an immensely diverse place. There was no singular Persian culture, instead each region had its unique way of life and interaction with each other. Without a unified caliphate government to promote the new Persian lingua franca, which was written in the Arabic script, Iran would likely continue to be culturally and linguistically divided among the different Iranian culture groups for a longer period of time. Today, Iran is already pretty culturally divided, so imagine that, but to a greater extent. Now, Persian culture over the centuries has been deeply influenced by Islam, with mosques being architectural masterpieces, for example, but a lot of Persian culture does not owe its existence to Islam, but the Persian people themselves. Great works of literature would still be written in Avestan, not Arabic, while those beautiful buildings would still be built, just in a different style and for Zoroastrian fire temples, not Muslim mosques. Iran might lose some of the close connection it has to the Middle East, but it would make it up with greater connections to Asia instead, with closer connections to China and India and Central Asia. Eventually, some empire would come along and reunite Iran. In real life, Arab rule of Iran was overthrown by the Safarid dynasty, which traced its origins to Zaranj in Afghanistan. It was followed by the Samanid dynasty from Samarkand and Bukhara, which was then followed by the Turkic Ghaznavid dynasty. Now, in real life, these dynasties brought immense wealth to the cities under their control. It was said that Bukhara was as rich as Baghdad in this period, for example. These medieval dynasties, or their equivalents in this scenario, would gradually mold together the culture of Persia. Just like in real life, Turkic culture would be deeply influential, but unlike real life, Arabic culture would not really be. Instead of Arabic serving as the script of the new Persian language, you would see that people use the Avestan script instead, which is actually kind of similar to Arabic anyways. So in this world, nobody would say Iran was part of the Middle East. It would solidly be part of Central Asia or South Asia, kind of like a third, smaller version of India or China. How about the economy? Now, in real life, Yemeni Arabs brought cotton farming to Iran under the Caliphate. This textile industry grew Iranian cities, challenging the power of the rural landlords, the dehqans. It's possible that the cotton industry would have taken off in Iran, but that seems unlikely without the close connection to the Arab world. So much of Iran remains rural, with landlords holding onto their power. The cities along major trade routes and close to sources of water would stay the largest. Just like in real life, this dynamic and rich region would see its greatest threat yet in the form of the Mongol Empire. Now, some of the details might be swapped around due to the butterfly effect, but we have no reason to expect the major trends of history to change. In real life, Genghis Khan invaded the Khwarezmian Empire in the 1200s, burning major cities to the ground and killing millions of people, by some count as many as 15 million. This irreparably weakened Iran. In the decades after, Iran seemed close to recovering, but weakened from some tragedy or another, the Black Plague or the conquest of Timur, and so on. Iran is likely ruled by Mongol descendant or Turkic descendant Central Asian dynasties for the centuries to come, though those are absorbed and digested into Persian culture. What about the Middle East? The Middle East would be mostly the same, but with some key differences. First, Muslim madrasas wouldn't exist, since those originated in Central Asia. Instead, mosques would serve as the key educational institutions instead. That's kind of the case in Algeria and Morocco in real life. The hadiths would be different as well. Probably most importantly, Baghdad would not be a major center of Muslim culture in the first place due to its proximity to the frontier. Probably Damascus or Cairo would fill its place. One could imagine this more westerly Islam devoting greater effort to conquering Europe in the 700s. Maybe Constantinople falls in 718, or maybe Muslim forces win the Battle of Tours in 732. In both cases, Islam would penetrate further into Europe and likely last longer on that continent, maybe even being a major religion in Spain or Greece in the modern day, not just Bosnia and Albania. Let me know if I should make a video about that though. Anyways, I could see it going either way. Maybe the caliphate performs worse in battle without the wealth and armies of Persia at its back. So Iran would have stayed weak and impoverished after the Mongol invasion. Without the benefit of the cotton industry, it might never have recovered as much as it did in real life under the rule of the Safavid dynasty. That actually raises an interesting point. So the Safavids were originally from northwest Iran and had roots with the various Muslim Caucasian people. It's possible that a Muslim dynasty of the Caucasus, just like the Safavids, would wash over a weakened Persia and conquer it in the 1500s. This would parallel the rule of the Muslim Mughal dynasty over the Hindu-majority India in real life in the 1500s. This Muslim dynasty rules over Persia for the next 200 years, basing its power in the Muslim west of the country, keeping its capital in Tabriz. Just like the Mughals, these Safavids would have to be religiously tolerant of the non-Muslim majority to some extent out of necessity. They might even make technological advancements in the form of gunpowder weapons, just like the real-life Safavid dynasty. By the 1700s, European imperial powers grow interested in Central Asia and Iran. Russia gradually conquers Central Asia while Britain moves in from coastal trade ports through its East India Trade Company. Now in real life, Iran was too strong to fall to imperial conquests. But in this situation, the empire is weaker and is ruled by an unpopular dynasty. Just like the Mughals, the Muslim rulers of Iran struggle to hold onto the country in the face of a massive revolt which probably champions Zoroastrianism. Britain takes advantage of the crisis to establish a mostly autonomous kingdom in the south of the country, while Russia conquers the north. Over the course of the 1800s, Iran is split between these two imperial powers. It's probably the gem of the Russian Empire, but isn't really worth that much to Britain. If Russia crumbles in the face of a great war like real life, North Iran and Central Asia would gain independence. We could imagine a nationalist revolution in the Zoroastrian areas, overthrowing Muslim rulers and ending the use of the Cyrillic alphabet, though Azerbaijan and Kurdistan remain controlled by Muslim dynasties. Central Asia sees the rise of a series of fragile Buddhist states. It's possible that a resurgent Russian Empire may be driven by communism or some other radical ideology comes back with a vengeance, reconquering those areas. After many decades of rule, Britain eventually evacuates from its puppet in southern Iran. Britain really doesn't have a motivation to maintain control in the form of an oil corporation like in real life. Those oil-rich areas in the southwest would be inhabited by Arab Muslims and be part of a different country. Nevertheless, we could imagine a secular, flawed democracy, kind of like a Zoroastrian real-life India, rising to power in southern Iran. Reunification with the north would be controversial due to different ways of life, different cultures, and different ideological perspectives on the importance of religion. The north might be more extreme due to years of rule by Muslim empires, for example. But the wave of nationalism and the threat of Russian invasion would drive these two halves of Iran together into a fragile union, the Republic of Iran. Okay, so how does the country look today? Well, it really wouldn't have the western areas Iran controls in real life, since those would be controlled by Muslims. On the other hand, it controls more lands to the east, where Zoroastrianism and Buddhism are popular, including much of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The largest cities would likely still be in the mountainous west, with cities in the desert east being much smaller. The majority of people would be Zoroastrian, though there would be a large Buddhist minority, especially in the northwest closest to Buddhist majority Central Asia, and a large Muslim minority too. The Persian language itself would be closer to the languages of Central Asia, while the Latin alphabet would be popular alongside English as a lingua franca. A later version of the Avestan script is used most widely. The country as a whole would be a lot poorer without access to oil. Imagine a gargantuan Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Pakistan does not exist as a country, while Buddhism is still a major world religion outside of China and Japan. How about Iranian politics? Well, the best comparison would be Myanmar, which was once a British colony. Myanmar has had a long history of military coups and civil wars between its many ethnic groups, with the Buddhist majority often launching massacres against the Muslim minority. I would bet Iran would be somewhere between India and Myanmar. Religious conflict would be common, but not maybe on a nationwide scale. While the country is nominally democratic through a series of checks and balances which guarantee representation to the various ethnic groups of Iran, the military often intervenes in politics. Now, Zoroastrianism in real life promotes greater equality between men and women than the conservative Islam embraced by the Iranian government. but this Iran would hardly be a beacon for women's rights just because of systematic issues. The country would probably be aligned with China due to shared Buddhism, mutual disdain for neighboring India, and the threat of Russia. So there you have it. Iran without Islam would be a lot similar to Iran in real life. Religion plays an important role in how societies form themselves, that's true, but religions are deeply influenced by culture and are just one of the many waves of the rising tide of history. But what do you think? If you have any additional ideas, comment them below and don't forget to like and subscribe.